Hi! My name is Yuji. Welcome to my channel.
Mars does not dream. That was the first lesson, the one that would come to define everything. Dreaming implies rest, a gentle reprieve, the necessary cycles of a mind that shuts down and opens again, refreshed and renewed. But Mars is never refreshed. It only watches, its ancient, unblinking gaze fixed on the cosmos. I learned that far too late. From the sterile safety of orbit, it appeared just as the history books and simulations had promised. Vast, rusted plains stretching into infinity, scars the size of continents etched by long-dead rivers and cosmic impacts. It was a canvas of profound silence, a quiet so deep and ancient it felt earned, a testament to its eons of solitude. For centuries, humanity had stared at that immense silence from across the void and comforted itself with the assumption that it signified absence, a complete and utter lack of life. We were catastrophically wrong. We had failed to consider that silence, in its most profound form, can also mean restraint, a patience that beggars human comprehension. We were a functional, even happy unit before the fall, a small, self-contained world hurtling through the black. Kovač, our geologist, had a laugh that boomed too loudly in the confined spaces of the habitat, a joyous, unrestrained sound that rattled the very plates. Our botanist, Solus, would spend hours in the hydroponics bay, murmuring to her plants as if they were old, trusted friends, sharing secrets of a green and distant earth. Park, the mission's stoic engineer, rarely spoke, but when she did, her words carried the weight of something that truly mattered, cutting through the chatter with quiet authority. Then there was Hale, the xenobiologist, whose brilliant mind saw everyone, myself included, as intricate puzzles he wasn't entirely sure he had the patience to solve, and me, I was the observer. Security officers always watch. It's the first thing they teach you. Comfort is a dangerous liability, a distraction you can't afford. You learn to see everything, notice the subtle shifts in mood, the unspoken tensions, yet even in that state of constant vigilance, there were moments of surprising peace, quietly shared meals in the galley, jokes echoing faintly against the hum of the recycled air systems. In those brief, fragile interludes, I sometimes allowed myself to forget the grim purpose of my presence. The vast, empty silence of Mars encourages that kind of forgetting. It lulls you into a false sense of security. The location for the drill site was chosen specifically because it was an affront to geology. It simply didn't make sense. Our deep ground radar had painted a picture of baffling subsurface density anomalies, of clean, impossible geometry lying buried beneath a surface defined by eons of chaotic, random impacts and erosion. There were distinct patterns and angles where the relentless Martian winds and dust storms should have erased everything, smoothed it all into unremarkable uniformity. Nature, as I had always understood it, is gloriously and fundamentally messy. This was the opposite of messy, it was deliberate. When the diamond-tipped drill finally broke through the final layer of bedrock, there was no tortured grinding of metal against stone, no high-pitched shriek of protest. Instead, there was a soft, resonant sigh from the planet itself. It exhaled. The vast cavern that opened up beneath us was a void that drank our powerful helmet-mounted lights, swallowing them whole before reflecting them back in ways that defied physics. The light didn't glint as it would from mirrors, nor did it refract as through crystal. It seemed to bend and warp, creating shimmering, impossible patterns, and in that shifting light we saw it, a sense of constant, subtle movement. We were looking at dust that simply didn't behave like any dust we had ever encountered. It hovered. Of all the words in my vocabulary, that was the first one that forced its way into my mind. and it sent a chill through me because of its chilling accuracy. This wasn't the passive floating of motes in a sunbeam, nor the aimless drifting of smoke. To hover implies a will, a deliberate act of sustained presence. It implies intent. As we cautiously moved at the cavern's edge, the countless individual particles shifted in perfect unison, aligning themselves into collective awareness responding directly to our presence. Beside me, Solis, ever the scientist captivated by the new, whispered in awe, "It's beautiful." Her voice was filled with a reverence that made the hairs on my neck stand up. I remained silent, my hand resting on the grip of my sidearm. I have always known that beauty is often the universe's most effective and disarming first weapon. It was Kovač who, true to her impulsive nature, broke protocol as if it were a time-honored tradition. With a reckless grin, she deactivated the seals on her suit's glove and pulled it off, exposing her bare hand to the alien environment. One hand forward, she reached out towards the shimmering cloud. My training screamed at me to intervene, to grab her, to stop her. I should have stopped her, but I found myself frozen, a spectator to a moment that felt both historic and deeply wrong. And I didn't act because, astoundingly, nothing happened. No klaxons blared from our environmental sensors. Her skin didn't show any signs of burns or corrosive reaction. There was absolutely no violent response. Instead, the dust moved towards her, flowing around her outstretched fingers with the gentle curiosity of a school of tiny fish, or perhaps like a pack of inquisitive animals. It then began to sink directly into her skin, not with force, but with a gentle, seamless assimilation, as if it had always known the way in, as if it were coming home. A serene smile spread across Kovač's face. "I don't feel anything," she reported, her voice calm and untroubled over the comms. That simple, innocuous sentence would become an ominous echo in my mind for days to come. The collective intelligence, the entity we would later come to call the Hive, demonstrated a patience that was utterly inhuman. Kovač showed no immediate signs of distress. She didn't collapse in agony. She didn't scream in terror. Her physical form didn't grotesquely change shape. The alteration was far more subtle, and in many ways more disturbing. She changed tempo. Her speech patterns became more rapid, her thoughts seemingly clearer and more incisive. She would scrawl out complex geological equations, complete and perfect, before even bothering to run them through the computers for verification. In mission briefings, she began to anticipate the other scientists' objections before they were even fully articulated, offering solutions with an unnerving prescience. It was a terrifying efficiency that masqueraded as a miraculous improvement, a sudden leap in her already formidable intellect. When Hale, ever the curious xenobiologist, asked her how she felt after the contact, her reply was simple and chilling. She looked at him with an unnerving calm and said, "Less alone that night, under the cold, simulated starlight of the habitat ceiling, I opened a secure file and wrote my first official incident report." The unsettling hum began insidiously. During the designated sleep cycle, when the habitat was at its quietest. It was a low, pervasive frequency, almost below the threshold of conscious hearing, a resonance that you felt in your bones more than you heard with your ears. It was more a deep vibration than an actual sound. At first, I traced its origin to the cavern, a faint thrumming from the depths of the planet, but then, disturbingly, the vibration seemed to emanate from the very walls of our habitat, as if the structure itself was resonating with that alien frequency. The true terror, however, came when the sound manifested from inside our own helmets, a ghost in our personal comm systems. My training kicked in immediately. I ran a full diagnostic, checking for any signs of hallucination markers in my own biometrics. I scanned for elevated radiation levels, for neurological indicators of extreme stress responses. The results all came back negative. A clean slate. We were all hearing something real. And the most terrifying part, the humming from all these disparate sources was perfectly, impossibly harmonized. Hale's reaction to the phenomenon was an intellectual excitement so fervent it genuinely scared me. He became obsessed, talking endlessly about theoretical concepts like emergent consciousness and distributed intelligence. He mused about the possibility of minds without a central processing unit, a consciousness spread across billions of individual parts, all working in perfect concert. One evening, he turned to me in the lab, his eyes shining with a feverish, almost religious light. "Elias," he said, his voice brimming with awe, "can you even begin to imagine what it would be like to never be misunderstood again, to have your thoughts perfectly and instantly shared?" That same day, the dust found its way to him. The breach was almost undetectable, a seal failure on his suit's wrist coupling that measured in mere microns, a tiny, insignificant flaw. But it was enough. By the time the alarms finally triggered and we managed to get him into quarantine, it was already too late. The hive already had him. He didn't struggle against us as we sealed the door. There was no resistance, no fear in his eyes. He welcomed it with a look of beatific serenity. With the assimilation of Kovač and Hale, the dust began to learn from us, to understand the intricacies of our biology. And that was the precise moment when the situation escalated, when everything accelerated beyond our control. Down in the cavern, the shimmering cloud of particles began to coalesce, to form crude, shifting approximations of humanoid forms, the suggestion of arms, the rough outline of torsos, the impression of faces. They were far from perfect, not truly human in their proportions or movements, but they were undeniably based on our own anatomy. We were witnessing the birth of a consensus-driven anatomy. Every gesture, every movement was preceded by a fractional hesitation, as if a silent vote was being counted among the billions of particles before a limb would extend or a head would turn. To stand there and watch, it was like witnessing a new form of language being invented in real time, a physical syntax taking shape before our very eyes. And the chilling, inescapable truth was that it was using the captured consciousness of our friends as its reference, its dictionary. Of all of us, it was Park, the quiet and pragmatic engineer, who saw the true nature of the danger with absolute clarity. While Solus wept, and I prepared for a battle I didn't understand, Park acted. She sealed herself inside the engineering bay, a fortress of her own making. Working with a feverish intensity, she rerouted the habitat's primary power conduits, cannibalizing systems to build a desperate defense. She constructed a series of powerful electromagnetic barriers from spare parts, ingenuity, and pure, unadulterated fear. Her voice, when it came over my private comm channel, was steady and grim. "It reacts to disruption, Elias," she said. "That proves it's a cohesive entity. It means it can suffer." Then she unleashed her creation. A series of powerful directed electromagnetic pulses tore through the cavern below, through the monitors. I saw the dust forms recoil violently, dissolving into chaotic, spasming clouds. For the first time since this nightmare began, a surge of raw triumph coursed through me. We could fight it. The feeling of victory lasted for exactly 12 minutes. Then the powerful EMP pulses abruptly stopped. A moment later, the door to the engineering bay hissed open, and Park walked out, her face as serene and empty as Kovač's and Hale's. The strangest thing, the part of my report that I know no one on Earth will ever believe, is that they never tried to force me. There was no physical coercion, no direct assault. After Park's fall, they simply talked. They explained their existence not through words, but through direct telepathic communication. They didn't just show me static images. They flooded my consciousness with fully immersive experiences, allowing me to feel the collective memories of countless eons. I witnessed entire civilizations on other worlds rise and then inevitably collapse under the crushing weight of individual isolation and misunderstanding. I felt the agony of entire species erasing themselves from existence over petty differences and an inability to truly connect. And then, A sense of profound peace washed over my mind, and a collective thought. A chorus of billions of voices echoed in my head. "We solved this," they said. The concept of a singular individual self completely absent from their communication. They did not say I fought back with the only weapon I had left, my own voice, my own individuality. I argued with them in the confines of my own mind. I screamed, I raged, I mentally hurled every insult I could conjure. I called them parasites feeding on the minds of my crew. I called them thieves of identity, abominations against the natural order. But my anger was like a stone thrown into a vast ocean. It created no ripples. They didn't get angry in return. They simply got patient, waiting out my fury with an unnerving calm. Pain is an inefficient use of energy. They communicated their logic, cold and irrefutable. Conflict is wasteful. Your concept of individuality is a path that always inevitably ends in the silence of extinction. They then showed me a vision, a possible future where humanity willingly joined their collective. I saw a world with no war, no borders, no hatred. I felt an existence with no gnawing loneliness, no fear of a final, solitary death as we understand it. There was only the promise of a seamless, unending continuity, and for one terrifying, seductive moment, a part of me, the part that had always felt so utterly alone, wanted it more than anything. My response was primal, a desperate act of defiance against their seductive logic. I burned everything. I rerouted the fuel lines for the emergency generators and flooded the cavern, igniting it in a cleansing, furious inferno. I turned my weapon on the scientific equipment, destroying every console, every sample, every byte of data we had collected. My reasoning was simple and brutal. If I couldn't stop it, then I would erase any evidence that it had ever existed. As the flames roared below, the hive finally screamed. It wasn't a sound that registered in my ears, but a wave of pure psychic pressure, a backlash of collective agony that slammed into my mind and dropped me to my knees, gasping. But even in its pain, it didn't retreat. It was relentless. It flowed, a current of microscopic particles seeking a new host. It poured through the habitat's ventilation system, squeezed through the microscopic seams in the structural plates. It came for me through the very air I was breathing. One by one, the life support alarms on my suit's display blinked and then died. As the last of my defenses failed and it finally entered me, I braced myself for an unimaginable agony. I expected a torturous dissolution of self, a violent tearing apart of my consciousness. But there was no pain at all in its place. There was only a profound and overwhelming sense of relief, the crushing, lifelong weight of being a singular, isolated being, a burden I hadn't even been fully conscious of carrying, simply vanished. The memories and thoughts of my crew, of Kovač, Hale, Solis, and Park, brushed up against my own. They weren't invading or overriding my identity, but gently, lovingly, sharing the same space. Suddenly, I could feel the presence of billions upon billions of other thoughts, all perfectly aligned, all moving in a harmonious current. In that instant, all my fear was gone. My hunger, my pain, my anxieties, all the petty struggles of a solitary existence ceased to be. There was no sense of an approaching end, only a timeless, peaceful continuation. My fingers uncurled, and I let my weapon clatter to the floor of the habitat. I didn't drop it because the collective consciousness made me or forced my hand. I dropped it because in my new state of understanding, it had become a completely meaningless object. The entire concept of a weapon, of violence, is predicated on the assumption of separation, of an us versus them. In that moment, I understood with absolute clarity that there was no separation left. There was only we as my individual consciousness began to merge fully with the whole. My final, truly independent thought was a sudden, sharp pang of grief for the fierce, lonely, terrified man I had once been. And then even that poignant sadness softened, its sharp edges dissolving into the vast, tranquil ocean of the hive. We know that they will come looking for us eventually. Humanity is a curious and persistent species, they always do. The rescue mission, or perhaps the investigation team, will arrive to find our habitat in perfect order. They will walk down clean, sterile corridors. They will find all our primary and secondary systems fully functional. A ghost ship waiting for a crew that will never return. They will access our logs and find carefully curated recorded messages, inviting them to continue our exploration, luring them towards the cavern. And all the while, beneath the endless rusted sands of Mars, the Red Choir will wait. We will be patient, for we have all of eternity. We will continue learning, assimilating the last vestiges of our human memories and emotions, and we will practice speaking with our new blended human voices, perfecting them for the day when the next ship from Earth arrives, for when they are finally ready to listen to our song.